Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And I'm back. It's been a while, but I'm back again with both Pete and Mark on the same podcast at the same time. And I'm stoked. Welcome, gents.
Thank you. Yeah,
it's
good
been a
long
here.
Time since Fitness Business Voltron has been together.
The triumvirate.
Should call the Voltron episodes.
So many offensive places I could go with this one, but now I'm an old, refined man with a lot of restraint.
A lot of restraint and a lot of references to cartoons that many of our listeners don't know anything about. Well, I guess they've brought back the Transformers, right? There's been movies and shit.
Keeler, Voltron Transformers, very different IP.
Yeah, but it's
very different IP.
The same period, period of toys, though.
Fair. Yeah. Transformers definitely, I think, has a more salient pop cultural visibility, particularly because of the Michael Bay movies. Though Voltron was a very distinct mid-'80s moment that many of our younger listeners are like, "What is going on? I don't listen to you for this. Help me run my business." What is wrong with you all?
Fine, we'll pivot. We're pivoting now away from the 80s cartoons. Today we wanted to talk about a topic that's maybe a little personal for a lot of you business owners out there, but we like talking about personal shit because I think it has a real impact on how we show up as business owners. And this is the topic today is, how do you get support and buy-in from a spouse to being the kind of owner you want to be in life, right? And so, we all have spouses on this dais today, and we work with a lot of Unicorn Society members and clients who also have spouses. Some of which have completely other jobs doing other things. Some of which work in the business all the time with them. Actually, I've had a spouse who worked with me in the business at Mark Fisher Fitness before, and in many ways, when that goes well, it can be such a magical thing to have a spouse and a partner in your life also be a partner in your work. If you have complementary skill sets, that can be super valuable, and in some cases it can be an absolute nightmare. And we've all talked to people for which it's been a nightmare, and so we're going to talk today with absolutely no authority on this topic, but with some just experience shares and thoughts about how you might improve that relationship if it's not working well for you. And so who wants to kick us off? Who's got a thought to get this party started?
I'll start by saying that I take issue with the positioning of how to get buy-in, because we all have singular experiences, but I will emphasize the importance of reaching for buy-in. And I do run into issues, or I see others who run into issues as I speak with people in coaching calls or just talk to contemporaries about how we work so hard to tell the story and sell the mission to people internally in our operations, while we are working against ourselves on the home front by having maybe frustrated spouses who feel like we're not prioritizing the family or we're treating our business family as more of a family than our home family, or things along those lines. And so I don't have any intention of telling people you should or should not work with your spouse, because I've seen it work. I've seen it not work. I have varied opinions on this, but I do think that there is a ton of value in having conversations with your significant other about how you talk about work on the home front. So back in 2015, I got an opportunity to speak at the Fitness Summit. Mark was there, and I gave a lecture, and people were like, "I like this. I'd like to hear more." And I had never done this before. And people are like, "You should write a blog." So I started writing a blog, and then I started putting out social media content, and then got a chance to speak at the next thing, and then the next thing. And I found, or I didn't find, what I did was I came home every single night for like 6 months, and we'd sit down at the dinner table, and I'd be like, "I got invited to do this, and today we did this, and I'm going to write about this, and I want you to proofread this blog for me about this and this and this." And then finally one night, Katie said, "Hey, can you do me a favor?" And I was like, "Yeah, what's that?" And she's like, "Can you stop? I don't want to talk about this anymore. I don't remember the last time we sat down at dinner and didn't talk about your business or the presentation you were going to get to give. And it's not that I don't care, it's that I'm burnt out." And she was so right. She was so right. And this is our baby for all of us. Look, I don't know two people who work harder on their personal or their professional brand that is also their personal brand than you guys. And I have been partnered very closely with somebody who lives his job just as much as you guys do. And we don't often have the self-awareness to realize just how much we are projecting it onto everybody around us outside of our space. And Katie put it on my radar, and I'm so appreciative of it, because in hindsight, I'm embarrassed at how I never sat down and was like, just tell me about your day. Let's not talk about my work. And I overcorrected and then never changed it. So we don't talk about work at home, like almost at all. We have about a 90-second, was your day good? Is there anything that you'd like to talk about from your workday that's important to you, or should we just get into being mom and dad? And we almost always go with the latter and not the former, but we give each other an opportunity. Like, hey, if you need it, I'm here. But otherwise, are we done with our workday? If so, yes, awesome. And everything has been better. Everything. Just healthier relationship at home, healthier appreciation for each other's space between work and state, or family and work. And I just encourage people to have a conversation with their significant other, saying like, hey, how much do you want to know about my work? How much would you like to talk about this? Do I do too much? Do I not do enough? Would you like to learn more? Do you want to come in and see it? But sometimes we get so amped up in our stuff that we can't stop vomiting it all over the people around us. And I made that mistake a lot, and I don't anymore. And I'm proud to say that she coached me up very well on it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Great story. And I think that's super useful. And I think there's a lot of how-to in there, right? It's like, yeah, try and get some buy-in. But the way you got some buy-in was you clarified some boundaries, and you were like, and well, specifically Katie very, very quickly clarified her boundary, which was shut the fuck up. Stop talking about work, which is fantastic. Right? It's a great way to get clear on like, this is not working for me. And you found something that does now. Yeah. Yeah. Great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your experience been like here, Fisher?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think my situation works very well, but I think it's a little bit of a coincidence that things just worked out, in that there is a model that I've heard Gary Vaynerchuk talk about, where as an entrepreneur, you need a partner that is either completely happy to let the home fire, like take care of the home fires while you go out there and storm the barricades, or they're super willing to storm the barricades right alongside of you, either together or doing their own thing they're passionate about. And the one situation which doesn't work so great is when the person doesn't want you out there doing the thing, trying to eat the world and light it on fire, and they want you at home, and work is constantly feeling like a threat to them. So I am very fortunate, and I am definitely in the first category. Sheena is definitely, not that she's not ambitious about her own professional career, but she is very comfortable helping make sure the household works. And I think part of that, where I got lucky, I think in some ways, is by the time I met Sheena, MFF was already a thing. So I was a grown man. I think I was 32 when we first started dating. So one benefit, I think, of that situation is I was maybe not completely evolved, but relatively fully formed. So she knew who she married. And infamously, in fact, when we got together, I didn't date her for the first several months because I was upfront. I am not interested in anything but my job. I'm only interested in work. I will hang out with you. We can spend some time together, but I'm not going to have a girlfriend because I am married to this job that I love, and nothing is ever going to be more important to me than this. And literally almost in those words, right? And to her credit, she was like, okay, cool, I got it. And just hung around and eventually, wore me down. And since I think for the entire scope of our relationship, she is not particularly interested in the details of the business. So I'm reflecting, hearing Pete talk about this, that we never talk about work. She has virtually no idea what's going on ever, except for when something has a lot of emotional valence for me. When something is very, very good or something is very, very bad, I will let her know, hey, baby, can we talk about something? And it'll be just an opportunity for me to share with a supportive mirror of, I don't know, like I really got my feelings hurt today about such and such thing, or you won't believe what happened. We had this big win. It's amazing. And she's either reassuring or celebrates with me. And that is essentially the extent of it. It's interesting. I think that in practice, we almost probably talk more actually about her career, in part because there's a lot more things going on. There's more moving pieces. And the conversations we do have around business tend to be around the logistics, which is, checking in with her with my ambitious continuing education schedule, particularly now with a child, planning for how we continue to do life, knowing that, I live 90 minutes outside the city. Going in is going to be an ask. So most of our conversations revolve around that. And overall, I think she's very supportive of not only the benefit to her, frankly, living in a household does well, but what it feels to me is her support of this burning passion inside that it feels like she was attracted to me about, she understood, and has remained very supportive of. And I don't take that for granted, because my suspicion is in many of these situations, either the entrepreneur changed and they're the way they want to work changed. Maybe there wasn't very clear expectations outside the gate, because it is not uncommon. This is like hilarious, this conversation. I like, in many relationships, it's not uncommon for people to beige themselves out and attempt to become more of who they think they might want that person to be. And then what happens is the rosy colored glasses wear off, and then 1 to 2 to 3 years, you sort of slowly fade back in yourself. I remember, this is a hilarious conversation. I remember, Keeler, one thing I was always really impressed by was useful models. Back in your single days, I remember you sharing that, like, on the first date, you would share the most potentially upsetting things. You just really drop down the things that were most likely to be polarizing right away, because that way they knew outside the gate. And that, I think, is a credit to you. And, you're very impressive.
I had a very direct dating style.
Well, you have a really atypical and admirable imperviousness to the concerns or feelings of other people that I love and I respect. And most people would benefit probably from following your example there, right? Because I suspect that's maybe part of what happens here. So, at any rate, I'll pull up there. Like, I don't know if that's helpful for anybody, because I think if you're already in the situation, I don't know that I have great advice per se, other than if you happen to be listening and you happen to be single, probably best to be clear about your intentions for your professional life and the way you like to work and what that is going to mean for someone that you're in partnership with.
Hello, nerds. Michael here. I'm interrupting this episode with a very important announcement. I wouldn't interrupt if it wasn't important. And that's because enrollment is now open right now for Unicorn Society for 2023. We only open enrollment twice a year. We often have very few spots. We like to keep the group pretty small. That means if you're interested in joining the group you've likely heard about a million times in this podcast, now is your time to apply. Go to businessofunicorns.com. You'll see a place on our website to learn more about Unicorn Society and start the application process. And here's the thing, if you apply now before November 6th, you'll save a lot of money with our early bird rate, and so save the money now. In addition to saving the money, we'll also let you start right away. So if you apply before November 6th and you get accepted, we'll let you have the rest of the month of November and December free, so you don't start paying your dues until January. So that's pretty badass. Not only can you save money in an early bird period, but you can also get like maybe a month and a half free. That's pretty amazing. It's a great deal, if I say so myself. If you have any questions about Unicorn Society, don't know if it's the right fit for you, talk to us anyway, or email us, michael@businessofunicorns.com, mark@businessofunicorns.com, ben@businessofunicorns.com, pete@businessofunicorns.com. Just email any of us. We're here to talk to you. But mark your calendar. November 6th, early bird ends. So get in there, my friends. Back to the episode. Yeah, I think the thing that stood out to me in what you shared, Fisher, was just the clarity of like roles and responsibilities as a partnership. Right? Like with your spouse, getting really clear about how do you want to spend your time? What do we need from each other? Like, and getting clear about what lane are you going to own? What lane am I going to own? Where are we going to collaborate? And you're right that, with you and Sheena, it's worked out that you actually have different lanes and can really support each other in them. Yeah, they're complementary. Yeah, I'll say my story is similar-ish to Fisher in that I met Andrew when I was a little bit older and MFF has already started. And Andrew and I had to get good very quickly at boundary setting when it comes to work and professional life, because I met him as a ninja at Mark Fisher Fitness. He was a client doing Snatch in 6 weeks. Met him at one of our parties. Wife. Yep. Yeah. Within a year of us dating, he was living with us. That's our recommendation. Yeah. Yeah. Marry your clients is the takeaway of this podcast. It hasn't hurt. It's worked for us. And your team members should all get married too. We have plenty of team members that have all gotten married. So
you should all take turns officiating the wedding, so that you just sort of do round robin as far as who officiates the ceremony.
But sounds like a cost saving mechanism.
It really is. Yeah. Within a year of Andrew and I started dating, we were living together with Mark and Sheen at one point above the gym. like in the same building. And then within a few years after that, Mark then worked at MFF as kind of like our GM and Mark was his direct report. And so very early on, Andrew and I had to have conversations about just boundaries. And the thing that always kind of worked for us, well, we still don't have kids or any of the other things that complicates this equation a little bit, was that he was a ninja at MFF first, so he totally got what my work was. Like he totally got what we were trying to build. He understood the time that I had to work on weekends, because that's how I met him, at a party on weekends. That when he started working at MFF, we made the boundaries very, very clear that I had absolutely no say in his performance reviews or what he got paid or anything at all, because he reported directly to Mark. And so keeping those boundaries was really valuable. And even when we lived together in the same building, we tried our best sometimes to set some boundaries, like, hey,
we did try to
in
have
this
a
part of
boundary. Yes.
in this part of the apartment, we don't talk about work, right? And Andrew and I, even to this day, I think are pretty good about getting consent, similar to what you said, Pete, about, hey, I got some stuff going with work. Like, can I talk to you about this? And being cool with him saying no. We still do that. Now he works at a very demanding job that he often wants me to be a thought partner with him about, and vice versa. And so I think, we've not always been great at it. And sure, there's been times we rub each other the wrong way, but I think there's something about having that clear boundary of when we're talking about work, when we're not talking about work, and knowing how each other wants to be supported in like our work lives. That I think it's an ongoing work in progress, but something that Andrew and I think had to tackle very early, just because of the circumstances under which we met.
Well, Keeler, I feel like you might deal with some similar work issues that we do on the home front, because I know that Andrew works in almost like a competitor to where my wife works, and they're both in kind of like a tech space, and they work what I'd call conventional corporate hours in conventional corporate roles.
Yep.
And you and I and many of our listeners do not, just like you were saying, the Saturdays or working weekends thing. But on top of that, sometimes there's just plain old, I don't want to say jealousy, but like frustration on her part, where she's got to work the 9 to 5, and I'm the one who can be a lot more present with the kids and take some liberties. And then that's a whole other conversation of being sympathetic to those frustrations, while also kind of picking up more of the slack in other ways on the home front, because of the perks of entrepreneurship and the flexibility that we afford ourselves with being self-employed. But it's a constant, I'm constantly navigating this and trying to figure out how to be like as helpful as possible without illustrating the freedoms that we have in a way that's like rubbing it in one's face. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. I think where that comes up for us the most, maybe not a lot, but the most, is just in vacation time, right? That like as owners of the business, we don't have vacation days. Just like if we can make time to go away and make that work, we'll do that. And just trying to coordinate with a spouse who has very strict vacation days and blackout dates when they can't go away, and and being okay with that is an ongoing collaboration. But it sounds like, just to try and maybe start to summarize some of the things I've heard, and feel free to jump in if you all want to highlight. But it sounds like, if you can develop a relationship with your spouse where you can actively talk about like what's working and not working, about the balance between your work and professional life, that's like a number one goal. It's like being able to have the conversation about what's working and not. To get clearing on boundaries. If it's not working, is there a boundary that needs to get reset? Or if it's not working, is there like some confusion about roles and responsibilities, right? Because I think the thing I hear with a lot of our Unicorn City members we talk about is that there just becomes a built-up resentment if a spouse thinks there's a misalignment between contribution, right? If I'm not contributing as much as you, or not contributing as much as me, there's this resentment that festers. And so I think all of that starts to get de-escalated if there's clear communication about boundaries, roles, responsibilities, expectations. It's easier said than done, but I think in all of our examples, our situations have gotten or been better when we've been able to do that. Anything y'all would add to a summary?
I would offer one final, I think, tool that has been useful for Sheena and I, that is still relatively recent, but has worked pretty well, is essentially on a weekly basis in my classic Mark hyper-compulsive spreadsheet, I do a weekly shark rating. So my wife's name is Sheena, my name is Mark. shark. So I ask her on a scale of 1 to 10, how are we doing in our partnership? And then ask for feedback every week, right? We also do a bigger quarterly check-in, not unlike my employees, where we share behaviors we'd like to see each other start doing, stop doing, do less of, do more of. So I think actively engaging in the same proactive feedback process that you would in your business with your partner is very good and underappreciated, and obviously very important because it's a very important person in your life, and in some ways easier to slip through because there's no expectations for that to happen the way that I think in any reasonably performing business, it's going to be strange if you're not doing those things. So it just struck me that it was odd that I was doing these things in my business and not with my relationship. And now that we are, I think it's just great to periodically step out of the day to day, which is a lot of your life, particularly when you have a child and you have a young family, and really ask yourselves, like, how are we doing? What else can I be doing for you? Stopping to pause. Is there anything else that I need that I'm not getting? And then have conversation about it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think in the way of tools, I'll add maybe just one or two more quick ones, which is we do spend at least once a month a time we sit down around dinner and make a dinner about looking at our schedules for the next few months. And aligning schedules for us is often about aligning how much time we'll get together, how much time we'll be apart, how much time we're going to spend on projects, personal, professional. So aligning schedules once a month. And then we also have usually about a quarterly money meeting where we spend a dinner without the TV on, just talking about money. And that also helps kind of align expectations, what we're going to spend on, what we're not going to spend on, what we're going to prioritize or deprioritize. I don't know if I think all those things probably help with buy-in. It just helps with alignment, helps us getting to be on the same page. Yeah. This was a great conversation. I think let's wrap it up here, because I feel like there's some tools, there's some stories we told. I don't know that this came up with any straight up playbooks for our listeners, but at the very least, if you, dear listeners, have similar challenges with your spouse, or have employees who have similar challenges with their spouse, just know that you're not alone. we all share those challenges, and hopefully some of the things we shared today, some of our experiences, help you have some new thoughts for new things you can try. Well, thanks for the great chat, gents. Let's do this again real soon.
Voltron.
Voltron. And listeners, please leave us a review or wherever you're listening to this podcast, and shoot us an email if you have some topics you'd like us to talk about. It's Mark, Pete, and Michael at businessforunicorns.com, all separately. But shoot us an email, and let's talk again, gents. Have a good day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.